What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some absolutely insane battles in the Great League Remix Cup with 3 of the most attack-weighted Ultra Beasts now that Blacephalon is Great League eligible. And so you guys understand just how attack-weighted these Pokemon are, if you sort by attack on PvPoke, you'll see that Kartana is right up there at the #1 spot, but what you don't see is that Blacephalon and Pheromosa have even higher attack stats, but their overall stat product is so low that PvPoke doesn't even consider them in the rankings, in the same way that Pikachu doesn't have a ranking for the Great League. Now in fact, if you don't take into consideration the 20% attack bonus that Shadow Pokemon have, the only Pokemon with a higher attack stat than this trio is Attack Form Deoxys. Now as you can imagine, that makes it incredibly difficult to get wins with this team, but I managed to get a few wins, and let me tell you, those wins were absolutely glorious. If you saw yesterday's video, you'll know that I had a 19-6 record with the team on the day, and today I managed the exact reverse of that with a 6-19 record. So if you appreciate the Elo sacrifice for the sake of extremely entertaining content, please leave a like on the video. And with that being said, let's get into the question of the day. What is your favourite glass cannon Pokemon that I've featured on this channel? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Alright, so heading into the first battle, the Blacephalon into a Shadow Poliwrath. Of course, we are a Fire type into a Water type, but we are double resisting the counter damage. They're not even going to farm to a Scald, so I'm going to let this go through here. And you can see a resisted non-stab Icy Wind nearly takes us out, and it gets us so low that I'm going to have to go for a Mystical Fire if I want any chance of making it to another move, but I don't even get to another charge move, so that's just how crazy this team is. And Blacephalon is actually slightly bulkier than Pheromosa, so this team is an absolute nightmare to use, and they're even able to outpace me to a charge move before Kartana makes it to a Leaf Blade. And you can see Pheromosa is getting absolutely destroyed by the Wii attacks from this Gligar, and we very comfortably lose that first game. But GG's to that opponent there. Into next game, we see Empoleon in the lead, but they're running Waterfall, so I have to get out of there as soon as possible. I was very slow to swap out there. We swap into Kartana, they go for a Hydro Cannon, and they're going to swap into a Gligar, and once again, they're still able to outpace me to that first charge move. I have to shield this. I cannot afford to let the Wii attacks take out my Pheromosa once again, so we're going to throw on the Simpy Tie here, and we go for the Night Slash. The opponent is actually going to shield, and I think that's probably what I needed here, because now I think I've put them into range where one Incinerate will get the KO. We do have to live 2 Wii attacks on our Blacephalon though, so we come in and we just barely get there in time. We can now go for a Mystical Fire as the opponent comes back in with their Empoleon. The opponent's going to use their shield, their final shield. We come in with Pheromosa, and we get the Bug Bite farm down. They've got a Charm, Alolan Ninetales, but Pheromosa hangs on and makes it to a close combat, which easily one-shots the Alolan Ninetales, and I'm able to take that game. So GG's to opponent there. Pheromosa, definitely the most useless Pokemon I think I've ever tried to use, but coming in clutch there, landing the close combat to take that game. But into the next battle, we see a Gligar in the lead, and honestly, there was just no way that I could run this team in an order where it makes sense, because there were just so many core breakers to the entire team. The opponent's going to swap into Umbreon, we're going to swap into Pheromosa, and I was thinking if they're running Psychic, then so be it, we're just going to go down, but they're running Last Resort, and even that puts us into 1 Snarl farm down range. Pheromosa is so damn rubbish, but I couldn't afford to shield that. I think maybe what I should have done was gone for a Mystical Fire and then swapped into Pheromosa to tank that move there, but basically I was just getting rid of the Pheromosa because they led with the Gligar in the lead, and of course we do not want to see it up against the Gligar. So here we go for a Razor Leaf farm down, but unfortunately not quite able to get there, so I'm forced to throw a charge move, which means they can come back in with the Gligar, go for their own charge move, and they've got a Carbink in the back anyway, so there was nothing I could do there, and we do end up losing that game. But GG's to opponent there. Into next game, we see a Fire type in the lead, so obviously this is where we want to see it, because we've got 2 Pokemon incredibly weak to Fire, and whilst Pheromosa doesn't take double super effective damage, it might as well, because those Fire Spins are absolutely going to shred through it. We go for a Mystical Fire, and the opponent calls the bait there, and I have to say, the amount of opponents that called a bait when I was going for a Mystical Fire and then shielded a Shadow Ball when I went for a Shadow Ball was absolutely ridiculous. Like, I couldn't have asked for worse luck. But either way, I'm going to go for a Mystical Fire, and again, they call the bait, but I'm thinking, my team is so glassy that I kind of have to drop their attack there, so that's why I went for it. But this time they do end up shielding. We swap into Pheromosa, and they've got a Whimsicott in the back, and luckily for me, it isn't Charm. It is just going to be Fairy Wind. We go for a lunge, and that does big damage considering it's only neutral damage there, and the opponent opponent is also going to be forced to throw their energy. Well, actually, technically they didn't have to throw here, but I'm hoping because they've thrown an Icy Wind, they're not going to make it to another charge move. So we wait out a switch clock, we come in with the Kartana, and we get the Razor Leaf farm down up against the Poliwrath to take that game. So GG's to opponent there. Into next game, we see Pelipper in the lead, and I will mention I faced many Yonkus lines in these battles here, and I didn't realize any of them were his teams because basically I was kind of just watching a bunch of his videos in the background whilst doing these battles, and I kind of watched them in like the wrong order of which teams came up. So this is going to be a Pelipper double steel line with, I believe, Steelix and the Extra Drill in the back, so I'm just going to no shield here. I'm hoping it's just going to be a Wither Ball, and it is the Wither Ball. We get the Razor Leaf farm down, and they come in with a Shadow Steelix, so we're going straight for the Leaf Blade. There's no point baiting with a Night Sash, and the opponent actually lets that go through. They swap into their Extra Drill, and honestly, if they're running a Shadow Extra Drill, we might even be able to fully Bug Bite farm them down. They go for a draw on there, which is very strange. Honestly, I'm not certain we would have lived it anyway, so we shield anyways. Obviously, they should be going for the Rock Slide there, because Rock Slide is at least neutral damage, and basically any neutral charge move is going to one-shot us here. They go for the Rock Slide this time around. We can get the Razor Leaf farm down, but we're too low that unfortunately a Dragon Tail takes us out from that Shadow Steelix, and we do end up losing that game. But GG's to opponent there. Internet's going to see Obstagoon in the lead, so definitely not ideal for us, but like I mentioned in the previous video, having a Ghost type up against Obstagoon isn't that bad because we are, of course, double resisting the counter damage. We're now going to go for a Mystical Fire, and then I think I will swap into my Pheromosa. I typically did not swap into Pheromosa because it's so risky, but luckily for me, the opponent doesn't counter me with a Flying type Pokemon. We're full sending in close combat, and unfortunately the opponent is going to use a shield on their Steelix, and at this point I'm thinking they're quite loaded. I might as well come in with my Kartana here, and it's quite unlikely that the opponent's going to be running Earthquake on the Steelix, so I'm going to no shield here, and the opponent is running Earthquake, which one-shots us. I thought about going for the Incinerate farm down, but I'm not going to get there in time, so I have to throw a Charge Move here, because that Obstagoon was, of course, loaded with energy. They come in with a Gallade, and we don't make it to the Shadow Ball. I need this to KO, and if it was a Shadow Gallade, it would have got the knockout, but unfortunately, they barely hang on. They get the Psycho Cut farm down, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there. Into the next game, we see an Empoleon, and this time they are running Steel Wing, which is much better for us. We can actually just stay in this matchup now. They go for a Hydro Cannon, and they are going to swap eventually into a Gligar. Fine with me. We're going to go for a Mystical Fire here. Mystical Fire is going to be no-shielded by the opponent. Like I mentioned, basically every time I baited, the opponent just no-shielded, and the few times that I did actually full send a Shadow Ball, they would end up shielding. But either way, we grab a shield there. We double debuff their attack, which is very nice, and we can come in with the Kartana and get the full Razor Leaf farm down. They come back in with Empoleon, and we are just going to be able to fully Razor Leaf farm down the Empoleon, and they've got a Gallade in the back once again. So at this point, I'm thinking, you know, I could obviously just shield this up and go for the Razor Leaf farm down, but instead, we're going to make sure that Pheromosa gets some action. Honestly, at this point, I'm thinking, you know what, I probably won't live a Leaf Blade despite it being non-stab and resisted, and a 35 energy charge move, so I play it safe, I go for the shield, and we get the Bug Bite farm down to take that game. So GG's to opponent there. Internet's going to see Mantine in the lead, of course. Not very good for us. I have to just stay in, basically. And at this point, I'm going to shield the first move. I think I'm going to go for one extra Incinerate. They actually full sent a Water Pulse, which is fine with me. We're going to go for the Mystical Fire. Once again, very risky bait here. And the opponent is going to call it. But we swap into our Kartana. We know that the worst case scenario is going to be an Aerial because it's very unlikely they're running Water Pulse and Ice Beam. So we no shield that. But they come in with a Charizard. Okay, this is fine. We can go for a Night Sash here. Night Sash is going to be no shielded by the opponent. We kind of needed that. But again, it's still going to be very difficult to get rid of the Charizard here. We come back in with the Blacephalon, and we're going straight for the Mystical Fire. Mystical Fire is no shielded, but they've got a third wing attack user in Gligar. How does this team make any sense? It doesn't make sense, is the answer. And unfortunately, Pheromosa had literally nowhere to run up against that team. We get Wing Attack farm down, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there. Into the next game, we see a Poliwrath safe swapping into us. Again, this time we're going to go for a Mystical Fire. Basically, every single time it's been called. But this time, the opponent does actually use a shield. And this is another Yonkus lineup here with the Alola Ninetales, the Poliwrath, and I assume to be a Swampert in the back. It could be something else here. It might not be the Yonkus team, but that's what I'm reading here, and we're able to grab both shields. This time they do shield up a Shadow Ball, but that's fine. I'm thinking, you know what, we're just going to sacrifice the Pheromosa at this point. Unfortunately, they got the perfect counter farm down there, which isn't ideal, but I have dropped their attack, so maybe we'll live a Scald here. It doesn't really matter if we don't. They go for the Icy Wind. That nearly KOs. We're going to snipe with the Kartana, and at this point, the opponent is going to think about what to do here, and they are eventually just going to concede the match as they realize it's game over. Kartana with a shield would sweep their team, so we're able to take that game. But into the next battle, we see Gudra in the lead. We say swap into our Kartana. Immediately we're met with a Poliwrath, and despite those Razor Leaves absolutely chunking, counter takes us out a lot faster because Kartana basically has no HP whatsoever. We're going to shield that up. They go for an Icy Wind, which is unfortunate because, of course, it does actually allow us to get slightly more Incinerates there. So we come out with a charge we've loaded. We full send the Shadow Ball, and it actually goes unshielded this time around. But since we were debuffed, they're actually able to live that there. So we can't really afford to shield this up. They go for the Aqua. We come in with the Pheromosa, and they've got a Registeel in the back. So my only win condition is if the opponent calls a bait here. So we full send the close combat. The opponent shields that up, and at this point, there's definitely no point shielding here. They're definitely going to outpace me to 3 charge moves before I make it to 3 close combats. So I just no shield, and they're able to take me out. But GG's to opponent there. Into next game, Defense Form Deoxys in the lead, and spoiler alert, this is going to be another Yonkers team. So the amount of influence that guy has on the meta that you're going to see, especially in the sort of lower ranks, is absolutely insane. They're going to say swap into Greninja, so at this point I realize it's going to be Steelix in the back, or at least it should be if they're following the exact same team. I'm going to call that I can live that, and we do just barely live the Night Slash, but I'm thinking maybe I should have saved my Kartana for the Steelix and brought in Pheromosa up against the Greninja. But honestly, despite having an insane attack stat, Bug Bites don't really do that much damage from the Pheromosa, so instead we're going to come in, get the Bug Bite farm down, of course, have to shield up a Psycho Boost there, and then I've kind of just got to hope that the opponent does no shield this, knowing that I've got 100 energy on the Blacephalon, but they end up shielding there. I think what I wanted was maybe if I could swap out before I had to throw a charge move on my Pheromosa, then of course I make it to 2 moves on my Blacephalon, but unfortunately Shadow Ball doesn't do enough damage to get the KO there. I think Mystical Fire, despite being super effective, would actually do slightly less damage than that, but unfortunately we're not able to Bug Bite farm them down, and despite knowing the team that they had and having pretty good Pokemon to deal with them, we still end up losing just because these Pokemon have basically no stats whatsoever. But GG's to the opponent there. Into next game, we see Empoleon in the lead. So definitely going to shield up the Hydro Cannon here, and we are going to massively overfarm. The opponent's going to come in with a shiny Shadow Poliwrath. So we're full sending the Shadow Ball, and this time they do call the bait, so we're just going for it once again here. Shadow Ball number 2 is going to be double shielded by the opponent, and that means we're only going to make it to a Mystical Fire. And of course, this is resisted damage, so it will not be enough damage to get the KO. It gets them very low into 1 Razor Leaf farm down range, but I assume they're just going to throw straight away, so we're just going to sacrifice the Pheromosa, and we've got to hope that Kartana can beat whatever is in the back. I'm not going to swap just in case they make it to back-to-back moves there, and they've got a Shadow Gligar in the back, so this is perfect. They actually swap back into Empoleon for no reason whatsoever, and now at this point we can just safely shield this up. We should be able to Razor Leaf farm them down at this point, but I'm not going to take any risks. We're just going to go for the Leaf Blade, and of course from this range, Leaf Blade will be taking out the Gligar, and I'm able to take that game. So GG's to opponent there. Into next game, we see Mantine in the lead once again. So, and again, a huge core breaker. We can't really afford to swap out, at least not straight away. So I'm going to shield this up here. Last time the opponent did actually call the bait as we went for a Mystical Fire. So this time we're full sending the Shadow Ball, but it'll just be my luck if the opponent ends up shielding the Shadow Ball, which is exactly what they do. So once again, going to swap into Kartana, and they actually come in with Credilli, which isn't bad for us at all. We should resist everything unless they're running like Bulldoze for some reason, but it's just a Rock Slide. We do live that, actually not that comfortably. I was hoping maybe I'd live it comfortably enough to make it to 2 moves here, but unfortunately Mantine can just come in, go for a full wing attack, farm down, and they've actually got quite a lot of energy, so very good timing there, throwing just before we make it to the Mystical Fire. They go for the Aerial Ace, we're going for the Mystical Fire now. Honestly, I'd prefer if they just let this go through here, but they're gonna shield, and they are gonna throw pretty much straight away, or at least that's what I thought here, so I'm thinking we should be able to Bug Bite farm them down, but no, they were 1 wing attack away from the next charge move, and it doesn't matter that they're debuffed. Aerial Ace is double super effective. It easily one-shots the Pheromosa, and we do end up losing that game. But GG's to opponent there into next game, a much better lead matchup for us as we lead into a Ferrothorn. They're going to swap into a Dragonair, so going straight for the Mystical Fire, and again they call the bait there. It just makes no sense to me at all. And I'm also someone that doesn't typically bait, and this is exactly why I don't bait, because it feels like every single time I bait it doesn't come off for me. But either way, we're still able to maintain alignment, and they come in with a load of Marowak. We're able to get off a Night Slash there and barely lift the Fire Spin damage, which is crazy since that's double super effective. But of course we got Pheromosa in the back. This is looking a little bit dicey here. I'm going to shield up the Bone Club. They will be able to outpace me to another charge move before I make it to back-to-back Mystical Fires here, but I just need to drop their attack. We go for the Mystical Fire, and we are able to get the new mechanic, or damage registration error, get off the next Mystical Fire, and that's absolutely vital for us because now we can just come in with the Pheromosa, and I can just safely shield this up. They're not at back-to-back charge moves, and we can go for the Bug Bite Farm Down, taking them out with the Pheromosa, and I'm able to take that game. So GG's to opponent there. Into next game, we can see a Dragonair in the lead. So I'm going to try to swap out there, but the game doesn't allow me to. So unfortunately, we stay in for way too long. We get like very low already on our Blacephalon with just a few Dragon Breaths. We swap into our Kartana, and they are quite slow to swap out, so I'm actually able to make it to a Night Slash. I throw on the CMP tie. The opponent is going to fall for the CMP tie there and throw straight away, but the opponent's going to go for a triple axle, and this is the right play to undercharge that, but actually it doesn't really matter because I'm still going to be able to incinerate, farm them down in just one fast move. So we get the farm down there, but unfortunately we're still not a charge move yet on Blacephalon, so this time we're going to go for the Mystical Fire. This point I realize even if they do no shield this, I should be able to Bug Bite farm them down. So we're going to come in with the Pheromosa, and the opponent is going to play very smart here as they swap into Greedent instead of throwing the charge move. And now what this means is I have to full send the close combat, but we're taking so much damage now that we've dropped our defense. They can just Dragon Breath farm down the rest of my team, and we end up losing that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. And if you want to take your support even further, you can now become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has already become a channel member. Your support is greatly appreciated, and with that being said, thank you all so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.